Well, hello. This is
Hi.
Callum, Minister for East at Above Bar Church, and I'm talking to Sally Campbell-Taylor today. Sally, what do you do? Who are you?
Who am I? What
Yeah.
do I do? These are very good questions. I head up the pastoral support at Above Bar Church.
Yep. And how long have you done that?
Just over 16 and a half years.
Wow.
What is
Yeah.
it they say? You get less
Yeah.
for murder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. True. Um, yeah. So today we wanted to talk about a quite serious topic,
Yeah.
kind of thinking about abuse of power, especially in the church.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sally, why is this? I don't know. Why talk about this on a podcast? Nice and cheerful.
Yeah, nice cheery topic, but an important one. And I think particularly because in the last few years there have been several cases in different areas of the church, different ministries around the world, um, of abuse of power, and these have been reported in Christian press, sometimes also in the secular press, and so people are aware of them, reading about them. The most recent one being the situation at Soul Survivor that was publicised quite a lot. So we just thought it was important to talk about, really, because people are aware, might have questions about it. But the other reason is because God cares about this stuff. He doesn't want power to be abused and people to be damaged. So yeah, it's important that we talk about it.
Yeah, and there can be a real, I guess, I don't know, sometimes we can there's been lots of cases we've seen, I guess, where it has been covered up.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe there's an instinct to protect the church or protect the institution, protect the leader
Mm-hmm.
over protecting the person, Jesus's flock.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And Diane Langberg, who's done lots of work with trauma, she's a therapist who's done lots of work with trauma victims, and she has talked about this topic quite a lot and stresses very strongly that we mustn't protect an institution
mm,
at the expense of the flock, as you say, and things need bringing out into the light. Jesus is the light of the world,
yeah.
and we want truth and light over concealment, and people over institutions. And sometimes these ministries or churches have had great reputations, had great things going on in them, and there's been a desire to protect that, or perhaps to minimize the bad stuff that was going on, because wow, God is at work. So
Yeah.
we don't want to rock the boat. We'll just keep quiet, or make excuses and say, oh well, it's just how that person is, or whatever. But meanwhile, people are being really damaged
Yeah.
by what's happening in the darkness.
Or sometimes even just simply not believing that could be the case,
Yeah.
oh, that person, they preach so well, or,
Yeah. Surely
there's
not.
so much good happening that
Mm.
that can't be the case. Yeah, as I was thinking about this topic, uh, in Mark chapter 9, and Jesus is talking about sin, kind of sprung to mind, and it's quite sobering. But he refers to a child. He's talking to the disciples, and Jesus says, do you see this child here? Anyone who welcomes a child such as this in my name welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me doesn't just welcome me, but the one who sent me.
Hmm.
And then he goes on to say, if anyone causes one of these little ones who believes in me to stumble, it'd be better for them if a large millstone was tied around their neck and they were thrown into the sea.
Mm.
And a millstone is a massive, heavy object. Otherwise, he's saying, like, it'd be better for you to drown
Yeah.
than to face me if you've caused one of my children, yeah, to stumble. It's quite like God takes really seriously the hurting of people, and I guess
Absolutely.
often with abuse also it can lead people to really question, is any of this true, and maybe even walking away or questioning their faith.
Yeah, yeah. I think abuse of power can have all sorts of impacts on people. People who've been directly affected by it, but people who are indirectly affected. So directly, people are likely to feel a huge amount of shame, even if it's not
Mm,
their fault.
yeah.
confusion, particularly as we were saying, if God's doing really good things through this person or through this church, but then this bad stuff's happening that's really confusing, can cause trust issues,
Yeah.
trusting leadership, and that can affect then relationship with God, because
Yeah.
God is an authority figure. So if this authority figure is behaving badly, can I trust anyone in authority? Can I trust God?
Yeah.
So those are some of the direct impacts, but even indirectly, I think within the church or within a ministry, it can affect trust, and cause a lot of confusion and
Yeah.
questions, which is partly why we're
Yeah.
talking about it today.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that you, Callum, have had some indirect
Yeah.
impact of one of these incidents in your life. So maybe you could tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I early in my kind of life as a Christian, I got really into Christian apologetics, which is basically is Christian wrestling with big objections and questions of the faith.
Hmm.
So, do science and faith contradict each other? Quick answer, no. Where is God in suffering? Is there any evidence for belief? Is those kind of big questions, and
Hmm.
I came across a particular person and a particular ministry that really I found like, oh, they give great answers that point to Jesus and are really thorough and really good stuff. Really encouraged me in my faith, and I got to study under them, which is what brought me to the UK in the first
Hmm.
place.
Hurrah.
And yeah, so it was a guy named Ravi Zacharias and Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. I ended up working for RZIM or RZIM for a year. And yeah, huge impact on my faith, on my walk with God, on my life.
Mm.
Um, Years after I worked with him, it came out that Ravi Zacharias had really been living two lives.
Mm.
On one hand, he had been doing all of this amazing ministry and literally like meeting with royalty in countries and stuff, and
Hmm.
and sharing the gospel and all these things. But he was also abusing women and had this whole kind of other life. And also in that, as that unraveled and as that came to the light, some people just couldn't believe it and really defended him and
Yeah.
almost circled the wagons in a
Mhm.
sense, in a way that in retrospect is just deeply, deeply sad and unfortunate. And all that to say, it had a big impact on my life. We weren't like best buddies, but I'd been in the same room. He had been my boss. We'd shaken hands. He'd had a huge impact on me and on a lot of people I know and love.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that really made me kind of question a lot of things and go, well, gosh, like,
Can
yeah,
imagine.
um, how do you trust, and why does God allow that, and all kinds of big questions. Yeah,
Sure, sure. And how would you say it impacted you in terms of feelings around the whole thing?
yeah. I think the I mean, my first reaction was a kind of deep sadness, and I had a moment. It was like during the Christmas holidays. I was walking the dog, and I just suddenly had this moment of kind of clarity. I was standing there in a field with the dog, and I just suddenly thought, like, I am mourning.
Yeah.
I am I'm mourning, yeah, a lot of things, including like how many people this has impacted. Mourning an own kind of, in a way, a loss of a hero in my own life, and also mourning just how much that duplicity, to use a big word, that hypocrisy mars Jesus's name,
Yeah.
the image of the church, of the
Hmm.
gospel,
Mm.
all those things. Yeah. So I definitely went through kind of, the I talk about in the grieving, kind of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I especially felt the depression side of it. And yeah, had a lot of processing to do with that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I can imagine. So what helped you in terms of processing that? Because we're just thinking about there may be people in our church who've been directly affected by
Yeah.
abuse of power in a church or in a Christian ministry, but also people who perhaps have just heard some of these stories and have similar questions or feelings of loss. What helped you, Callum?
Yeah, I think a big part of what helped me was being able to process it and talk about it. I mean, with God, and being honest with Him. Um, Sometimes I write prayers out when I'm kind of struggling but need to like really let something out, kind of lament, or just, kind of some of those Psalms where David
Yeah.
is like, thrash my enemies. And oh, that's very, very brutally honest. Writing those things out, and then also processing it with some trusted people, talking about it. Yeah, a lot of processing, a lot of talking for me was a big part of it, and time was a big part of it. I think one of the things that helped me most was seeing, ultimately, our faith is not founded on Ravi Zacharias or Soul Survivor or any human being other than Jesus,
Yeah.
the Word who became flesh. Jesus never once has been a hypocrite. Jesus is the one who perfectly does where we always fail, where the people of God all fail. And church is messy. It's full of broken people. I can see in myself, the same. People always said, like, well, with Ravi Zacharias, there should have been more accountability. He had accountability.
Okay.
There were structures in place, but the ultimate kind of thing is, you can get around, you can just, if you just don't share, that like kills a lot of accountability, and how it works. The ultimate thing is like that desperate need for God's grace and to kind of throw yourself on His forgiveness. Yeah, desiring to love Jesus more than any other thing in your life, and recognizing that, like, you might think, "Oh, I would never go that far, do those terrible things." Like, yes, you could. Well, it's that
Yeah, we're all human, we're all susceptible, aren't we?
yeah, that sin is there, in all of us, and we desperately need the gospel of grace and
Yeah.
transformation in our lives.
And having some power can, lead to
Yeah, yeah. And I'm
a
still
sinful
very pro
attitude.
accountability and all those things, and I
Yeah.
definitely have that in my life. But I just kind of recognize, look, if you really want to get around things and your heart is set on that, you can.
Yeah.
The ultimate one who sees everything and who you're ultimately accountable to is God.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's that need to guard our hearts, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
And be humble, be sort of recognize that we are susceptible, because
Mm.
sometimes we can, oh, as you say, I wouldn't do that, and that's pride, and
Yeah.
pride comes before a fall,
Yeah, exactly.
as the
Exactly.
saying goes. So it's recognizing that we are susceptible, wanting
Yeah.
to guard our hearts, having people that we can
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
very real with and
Yeah.
talk about our struggles and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I guess,
temptations and so on.
yeah. Even from that perspective of being real, like, you have to really be committed to it and want to be real, and part of,
Mm,
because otherwise you could just hold stuff back,
sure.
not say lots of things. And that desire, I think, ultimately comes from God, and really wanting, actually, even above me looking good or whatever,
Mm,
I want to be, as best I can, yeah, a follower of Jesus, and that looks
yeah.
like humbling myself uh, and sharing the warts and all, uh, with people who can
Mm.
help.
It's a
Yeah,
tricky balance, isn't it? Because we have role models. We're called to be role models.
yeah,
Paul, the Apostle Paul, was a role model,
yeah,
but it's making sure it doesn't go too far, and being a role model like Jesus, who was
exactly.
humble, gentle, and
Yeah,
lowly in heart.
and it's Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Christ.
Mm,
And so it's, for our role models, of not putting them on a pedestal, but
mm,
saying, gosh, I really see Jesus in this aspect of their life. I
yeah,
want to, like, model after that. Um, but at the same time recognizing even our best role models, if their name is not Jesus of Nazareth, they are not
They're not
they're
perfect.
not the savior, they're not perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and neither are we. And I mean, in my experience, it's somewhat secondary. Like I can't imagine what it's like for some people who've maybe experienced abuse of power in the church more directly.
Mm.
Yeah. Sally, I guess what are some things maybe, yeah, for people if they are feeling, I don't know, soul survivor or other things that's really impacted them, it's really shaken them.
Mm.
I don't know. What are some things they can do you think?
I guess there are two sides of this, aren't there? I mean, we trust that, we hope and pray and trust that this sort of thing wouldn't happen within Above Bar Church, but we have things in place where people can report if they feel there has been any abuse of power. We have safeguarding, we have a whistleblowing policy, and so on. And we would really want to take seriously any claims like that. So want people to know that they would be listened to. We know too that people can make false claims, but we would want to listen, take it
Yeah.
seriously, not deny it or defend it or
Hmm.
dismiss it, whatever. But aside from that, there may be people within Above Bar Church who perhaps have experienced abuse of power somewhere else and are still carrying the scars from that. And we do offer pastoral support to people. We would encourage, like you were saying before, what really helped you was to talk to trusted people. We would encourage people to talk about the things they've experienced that have been difficult, to talk it through with someone, have someone walking alongside. And so, yeah, there's pastoral support. People can email pastoral@abovebarchurch.org.uk to access that or speak to me. Obviously, we have our senior team and our elders who would be happy to talk to people. So we just want to offer that there are people to talk to if this is an issue for people, whether directly or indirectly.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Yeah. I think another kind of random thoughts from Callum here, but I was thinking about as well, just, you know, Jesus, I don't know, loves for his church and died for his church, his people. And it's really tempting, I guess, with some of this to just say, well, I give up on the church. Um, and I guess I just really encourage, well, it's right to have space and time to process. Like, I just encourage you, like, not to give up on the church. But also, I think sometimes our model of church has been very top heavy, of kind of everything is on the person on the stage, and they are the great high leader. And I recognize even in myself sometimes that kind of like, oh, getting asked to speak at this conference, hooray! Like, yes, that's progress in ministry. We're actually, progress according to Paul is growing in faith. And yeah, so that kind of, I guess, we're not meant to go it alone
Yeah.
to process these things. We kind of need each other, need to talk about it, need people. And
And in
yeah,
addition to that, I think abuse happens within relationships.
yeah,
Obviously, wrong dynamics of relationships, but it's within relationship that abuse happens, but it's also within relationship that healing can happen. And I think if we can have healthy, positive, godly relationships within the church, that will help people who've suffered within other relationships to find some healing too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And pray, ultimately, pray. Above Bar Church would not be a place
Absolutely.
where these things happen, would not be a place. I think of 1 John 1, where it talks about, like, if we step into the light, he's faithful and just, and that imagery of being people who live in Jesus's light. He's the light of the world and not in the darkness.
Yeah.
And the darkness, the enemy, and all kinds of things happen, but we want to live in the light, and that can be scary, stepping into light and saying either this has really hurt me, or saying I have done these things. But it's only there with truth that God's grace can really work in us as individuals and as a community. Yeah.
Amen to that.
That. Any final thoughts from you, Sally?
I don't think so.
Right.
Yeah, it's been great to chat about this, Callum, and
It's great.
hope it'll be
Great
helpful
chat
for
to you.
people.